Hello there, stranger. Tag along with me today as we drive through Utah's Upper Colorado River Scenic Byway, more formally known as Highway 128. This scenic drive will have you glued to the windows or your computer/phone, depending on how you're viewing it. It is a 44-mile long highway that will have you in awe almost the entire way because you're going to see lots of. Well, you know what? I'll just let the views speak for themselves. But before we get too far into it, let me show you a map of today's journey. We'll be taking off right here on the north end of Moab at the Lions Park and Bike Path Trailhead, and we'll be following right along the Colorado River dang near most of the way until Highway 128 runs into I 70. As soon as I got going, I was so tempted to turn around after I saw the bike path on the left side of the road. I'm a huge sucker for bike paths, and the surrounding views made it irresistible, but I did have to show some self restraint because the week I was here, the weather was extremely wishy washy, and I was worried that I might not get another chance to film this video. Prior to this trip, I purposely did very little research on this scenic byway. A pattern that I've noticed when it comes to making videos like this is when I try to cram as much information into my head before a trip, it tends to take the punch and authenticity out of the experience. That's why this time around, before my trip, I just looked up some generic details before I left. And don't worry, I'm not going to show you everything. If you see this video and you decide to come out here at a later time, I'm going to leave some surprises for you. Within minutes of getting my drone up in the air, that's when the thoughts started to come in. Whose idea was it to put a road in here? When did they do it? And most importantly, how? Surely it couldn't be easy with the rise and decline of the Colorado River water levels throughout the season, and of course the hazard that the red sandstone cliffs pose. If you were to ask a local what to expect on this glorious drive, they'd for sure bring up the majestic views of the towering sandstone cliffs, perhaps a campground to stay at along the way, or they might just recommend an activity such as rafting down the Colorado River, mountain biking, hiking, horseback riding, or pulling over and cracking a cold one on a sandbar while the river flows beside you. And while all of those sound like fun activities to partake in, the scenic byway wasn't built specifically to serve the needs of those looking to take a vacation in a gorgeous desert landscape. And in fact, its purpose was much greater and starts over a century ago. In the late 1800s, gold was discovered in the La Salle Mountains and Upper Castle Valley, and as word got out, this attracted prospectors to the area. Nearby in Moab, they started to see an increase in Euro American settlers and slowly started developing into an agricultural community. Now, at this time, there was no simple travel route to go from Moab to Castle Valley. The only way to Castle Valley from Moab was a pack trail through some rugged landscapes, which always took days to complete. Let me show you on a map. So right here we have the little town of Moab, and then over here we have Castle Valley. Back in those days, travelers would enter right here through Grandstaff Canyon, and they would follow the canyon all the way up until about right here. And once they got to this point, they would make their descend down into Pinhook Draw. And by the way, this is over a 1,000-foot descend. And once they made it into the Pinhook Draw area, they just simply made the rest of the way into Castle Valley. And like I said, this took days. And nowadays, it's just a 30-minute drive from Moab. As you can see, traveling time was a huge opportunity. Settlers began requesting an easier travel route from Moab to Castle Valley and other remote mining and ranching settlements. By 1900, there was a petition by Grand County for a new road to be constructed along the Colorado River. Soon, a gentleman by the name of Captain Samuel King was tasked with building this road by the Grand County Commission, and he only had 1 year to do it. He quickly got to work and rounded up local laborers who had access to horse-powered equipment to carve a wagon road into the rough and tough rocky landscape. Fast forward 2 years later, and the toll road was completed, making transportation much easier and faster for wagons and mule trains. The road was eventually rerouted in the 1920s to sit above the high water mark of the Colorado River and was later designated Utah 128 as part of the Federal Highways Act in 1921. Over time, the popularity of this road increased and it began to see more and more traffic, which resulted in road improvement projects, which later included paving the entire length of the roadway. Just thinking back on it right now, can you imagine the sheer amount of time it would have taken to go from Moab to Castle Valley and back? If you look at it on Google Maps, and in a perfect world, if you could do it in a straight shot, it would only be a little over 8 miles. To me, walking 8 miles really isn't that big of a deal, but when I measured the distance on Google Maps following the old horseback route, it would have been 25 miles each way, and this is back in the late 1800s, mind you. That doesn't even begin to factor in things like potential flash floods in the canyons, the unforgiving desert heat in the summertime, and the unpredictability of the trail. Can you imagine getting about halfway there on horseback only to find out you have to turn around because of a rock slide or the trail got washed out? I bet they were beyond thrilled when they put in that highway. It was extremely hard not to stop every 5 seconds and take photos of everything, but the views around every curve offered something a little bit different. And as I've said before, the views on the drone don't even compare close to seeing it with your very own eyeballs, but sometimes I like to think it's pretty darn close. After learning a little bit about the history of Moab and how it formed, it gave me a greater sense of appreciation during my time here. And what I mean by that is this: no one can predict what Moab, let alone the Earth, will look like in 500, 5,000, or even 50,000 years. At any point in time, there could be a random cataclysmic event that could completely reshape these gorgeous landscapes that we take for granted today. And I know this might be a little bit of an extreme example, but I guess what I'm trying to say is all of these canyons, cliffs, spires, arches, and other unique geological formations are the end result of millions of years of erosion, rising and declining sea levels, uplift, and massive salt and sedimentary rock deposits. Now, the process is a little more complicated than that, but I hope you get the gist of it. Anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is how lucky are we today to be able to see something as majestic as this that took millions of years to form? The next chapter in our journey through Highway 128 was pretty fun. After we made it out of the canyon, the land really opened up, and you could see all the red cliffs and buttes in the distance. It felt like something straight out of an old Western movie, and in fact, many old Western movies have been filmed along Highway 128, the Moab area in general, and on the property of the Red Cliffs Lodge. John Wayne even stayed there many times, and some of the movies that were filmed on the property include Wagon Master, Warlock, Rio Grande, Geronimo, Thelma and Louise, and many more. I even made quite a few friends while I was out in the area, although I don't think they were too interested in having a conversation. At this point in the drive, I was close to the halfway point. I was already beyond impressed with what the first half had to offer. It was a nice little drive through the valley, but what I was really looking forward to was getting back into the canyon. I don't know how to explain it, but there was just something very therapeutic about this drive. Maybe it's the contrast of seeing these vibrant red cliffs meeting with the light blue sky, or maybe it's the fact that it's just nature out here. There's no hustle and bustle of the city, no crazy traffic with people blaring their horns nonstop because someone is driving way too slow, and none of that foul city smell. You know what I mean. That overwhelming odor of car exhaust, cigarette smoke, urine, trash, and those water canals that bring rainwater and runoff back into the lakes. Not all, but some of those canals smell like death, feces, and dirty gym clothes that have been festering in a moist environment for way too long. We're getting off topic. What I mean to say is, it was a very relaxing drive with minimal distractions. Everything was going great. I was listening to John Mellencamp on the radio, I had the windows down with the AC blowing, and then all of a sudden an insect hit my camera. Now, of course, I didn't notice this until I stopped, and when I did, my first thought was, how long has that been on there? And the answer was, the majority of the drive. Luckily, I had my backup camera going on my dashboard, and I was able to continuously shoot without the dry, flaky bug guts on my lens. I was really tempted to get my drone out and initiate follow mode at this point, but unfortunately, it was just too windy. I always find it fascinating at how quickly the terrain can change. Notice how we just went through a very red and winding canyon, and as we start to leave the canyon, the colors start to get lighter and the land gets flatter. As I was crossing the Colorado River, I saw what appeared to be the remnants of perhaps an old suspension bridge off to the right, and it looked like it had seen much better days. Curiosity always gets the best of me, so I pulled over to get a closer look and try to learn a little bit more about it. Ladies and gentlemen, what you see here is what remains of the old Dewey Suspension Bridge. It was built in 1916 and played a significant role when it came to transportation and linking southeastern Utah with Colorado. It was designed to support the weight of 6 horses, 3 wagons, and 9,000 pounds of freight. Even though it may not resemble what it looked like many years ago, before it was destroyed in 2008, it was the longest suspension bridge in Utah, and at the time of its construction, it was the second largest suspension bridge west of the Mississippi. Now, it did undergo a restoration project in 2000, but sadly, on April 6, 2008, a 7-year old boy accidentally started a fire nearby while playing with matches. The fire eventually moved up the riverbank and destroyed the bridge's wooden deck and rails. And this, my friends, is a prime example of why you should never play with matches. I was hoping there would be a little bit more to see before I ran into I 70, but believe it or not, this was as good as it gets. I think I was only about 3 miles from Interstate 70, and I didn't want to end the video on a boring note, so I turned around and initiated the follow me mode on my DJI Mini 4 Pro drone, and this shot turned out great. The views coming out this way were already phenomenal, but I think the views coming back were even better. Seeing the LaSalle Mountains slowly coming into view as the canyon opened up was icing on the cake. The wind had died down just enough for the drone to keep up with my car, but as I creeped out of the canyon, the wind picked up and the gap between the drone and my car started to get bigger. And hey, if you've ever traveled on Highway 128 before, feel free to share a memory down in the comment section. And don't forget to click the next video to continue the fun.